Life will throw you curveballs when you least expect them. You can be minding your own business, working hard, staying consistent, and still find yourself hit with struggles that don't make sense. It doesn't feel fair when you've done everything right and things still go wrong. But in those moments, you've got to remind yourself that life being unfair doesn't change who God is. His faithfulness isn't dependent on your situation. You may feel like you're drowning under the weight of things you didn't deserve, but God has never abandoned you. He has been there in the shadows, holding you up when you thought you'd fall. Sometimes we look at life and say, "Why me?" But the real question is, why not me? Because through it all, God shows His strength when we're weak. The unfair seasons of life are often the places where God's presence is revealed the most. You don't realize how faithful He is until you've been in a position where no one else could save you. That's when you see His hand move. You don't understand loyalty until you've watched everyone else walk away and He stays. There will be people who promise to be there but disappear when things get tough. But God doesn't play hide and seek with His children. He's consistent, He's steady, He's the anchor when the winds of life get too strong to handle. His faithfulness is proven in the moments when you least expect it. So even when it feels like the world is stacked against you, you've got to hold on to this truth. God is for you. When you realize He's on your side, the fairness of life doesn't even matter anymore, because His faithfulness outweighs every unfair thing you've ever been through. You might not understand why things happen the way they do, but you can be confident that God has a reason. Life doesn't always hand you what you want, but it will always teach you to depend on God. And when you depend on Him, you will see that even in life's unfairness, He never stopped being faithful. And when you can't figure out the why behind your pain, you can trust the who that is carrying you through it. That's why you have to keep your faith steady no matter what life throws your way. We live in a world that's addicted to instant results. You want it quick, you want it now, and when it doesn't show up on your schedule, you start to doubt. But God doesn't work on human time. He works on His time, and His timing is always perfect. Some of you are frustrated right now because you thought you'd be further ahead by this stage in your life. You thought you'd already have the career, the family, the house, the dream, but instead you're sitting here waiting, wondering if it will ever happen. And God is saying, "Be still. I've got you, but I've got my own clock." If God gave you everything the moment you asked, you wouldn't be prepared to handle it. You'd drop blessings because you weren't ready to carry them. His delays are not denials, they're protections. That job you didn't get, that relationship that didn't last, that opportunity that fell through, it wasn't rejection, it was God's timing at work. The waiting room can feel like the hardest place to be. It's frustrating, it's uncomfortable, but it's in the waiting that God builds your patience and strengthens your faith. He's not just preparing the blessing for you, He's preparing you for the blessing. Sometimes you've got to thank God for the doors that didn't open when you wanted them to, because if they did, you might not be standing where you are right now. His timing saves you from disasters you don't even know about. While you're stressing, He's arranging. While you're crying, He's setting things in order. When you understand that His timing is about protection, not punishment, your whole perspective shifts. You stop begging for things to happen right away, and you start trusting that if it hasn't happened yet, there's a reason. And when it finally does happen, you'll look back and realize that it showed up exactly when you needed it, not a moment too late, not a moment too soon. Every struggle you're facing right now is training ground. That test you think is breaking you is actually building you. But because it's uncomfortable, you assume it's punishment. You assume God is angry at you. You assume you've done something wrong. But what if the test isn't about punishment? It's about preparation. When you go to the gym and pick up heavy weights, it hurts. Your muscles burn. You want to quit. But that resistance is making you stronger. The same is true in life. That test is resistance training. It's building you up for something greater down the road. You've got to understand, God doesn't waste experiences. Nothing you've gone through is pointless. That pain is teaching you patience. That heartbreak is teaching you resilience. That failure is teaching you discipline. Every single test has a lesson attached to it. But if you quit in the middle of the test, you'll never reach the graduation. You can't drop out and still expect the degree. You've got to push through. The test isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to prove what you're made of. When you trust God during the test, it changes how you see it. You stop asking, why me? And you start asking, what am I supposed to learn here? That's when you shift from victim to victor. That's when you realize you're being shaped for something greater. Some of the greatest blessings in your life are waiting on the other side of the test. But you'll never see them if you keep treating preparation like punishment. Shift your mindset, and you'll see the test for what it really is, a setup for growth. And once you pass the test, you'll look back and thank God for every painful, confusing, frustrating season because it prepared you for the level you're walking into now. Fear has a way of stepping into your life like an uninvited guest and trying to take over. It will whisper in your ear and remind you of every time you failed, every time you got rejected, every time things didn't work out. It gets loud. And if you're not careful, fear's voice will drown out your faith. Fear will always give you the reasons why it won't work. But faith gives you the one reason why it will, because God is with you. When fear gets loud, faith doesn't always scream back. Sometimes faith is just a quiet whisper, a still voice that says, keep going, I got you. And if you want to make it, you've got to train yourself to listen for that whisper. Fear feeds off attention. The more you focus on it, the louder it gets. Faith, on the other hand, grows when you decide to trust, even without proof. Fear wants you stuck. It wants you paralyzed. It wants you so focused on what could go wrong that you never take a step toward what could go right. Faith says, step out anyway. It's not about having all the answers. It's about moving forward when you don't. Fear will have you sitting on the sidelines of your own life while faith dares you to get in the game. You can't stop fear from showing up, but you can decide it won't get the last word. Every time fear says, you can't do it, you've got to counter with, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Every time fear says, you're not enough, faith says, God's grace is sufficient. The truth is, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to trust God more than you trust fear. You've got to get to the place where your faith speaks louder than your feelings. Your feelings will say, stay safe, don't risk it. But your faith will say, move, even if you're shaking. What you focus on grows. If you keep feeding fear, it will control your life. But if you feed your faith through prayer, through gratitude, through trusting God daily, it will get louder. It will overpower the fear that's been trying to hold you hostage. And once you decide fear won't be the loudest voice in your life anymore, you'll start walking in a boldness that changes everything. One of the most exhausting things you can do is try to control stuff that's way outside of your reach. You stress over people, over timing, over situations that are simply not in your hands. That's why so many of us are drained, not because life is too heavy, but because we're carrying what was never ours to carry. You can't control how people treat you. You can't control when opportunities come. You can't control every detail of the journey, but you can control your trust. You can control your choices. You can control how you respond when life doesn't go as planned. That's where your real power lies, not in control, but in trust. When you keep trying to control what only God can handle, you set yourself up for disappointment. Because no matter how much you plan, things will happen that you didn't see coming. And if your trust is in your own ability to manage it all, you'll break under the weight. But if your trust is in God, you'll discover a peace that makes no sense in the middle of the storm. We've all been guilty of trying to play God, making moves without prayer, forcing doors to open, trying to manipulate outcomes, and every time we do, we end up frustrated. But when you finally learn to say, "Lord, I don't have to control it because I trust you do," that's when things shift. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is strength. It takes more courage to let go and trust than it does to hold on and try to fix everything yourself. Because trusting God requires faith. It requires humility. It requires patience. And those are the very things that make you stronger. Sometimes God is just waiting on you to release your grip before He moves. He's saying, as long as you think you can do it all, I'll step back. But the moment you hand it over, I'll step in. That's the kind of trust that changes lives. And when you finally stop trying to control what you can't, you free yourself up to walk in peace, confidence, and joy, no matter what comes your way. We get so frustrated when doors close. You thought that job was it. You thought that relationship was forever. You thought that plan would work. And when it slammed shut, you thought it was the end. But the truth is, closed doors aren't the end. They're God's way of redirecting you. You've got to stop seeing a closed door as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. If God didn't want you to walk through it, it's because He has something better lined up. You're crying over what you thought was the only way, while God is preparing another door that leads to something greater. Sometimes God shuts the door to protect you. That opportunity you wanted so badly could have destroyed you. That relationship you begged Him to save could have broken you. That plan you tried to force could have left you empty. You can't always see what He sees, but you can trust that if He closed it, He had a reason. Closed doors also test your faith. Will you trust Him when it doesn't make sense? Will you believe He's working when you can't see it? Will you keep moving forward when the door you wanted is no longer an option? That's where real trust kicks in, not when things go your way, but when they don't. There are blessings behind doors you haven't even knocked on yet, but you'll never see them if you stay stuck staring at the one that's shut. Sometimes you've got to thank God for the no's, because they clear the path to the yes you've been waiting for. The longer you live, the more you'll realize that some of the best things that ever happened to you came after something you wanted didn't work out. That job you didn't get led you to a career that changed your life. That breakup made room for someone better. That disappointment became the setup for something greater. And when you start trusting God with closed doors, you stop panicking when they slam shut. You start getting excited because you know that means He's rerouting you to something better than you imagined. Too often we discredit the small steps because we think success has to come in big leaps. But progress doesn't always look flashy. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's steady, sometimes it's just one step forward on a really tough day, but it still counts. God doesn't measure your worth by how fast you move, but by how faithful you are. The Bible says, don't despise small beginnings because everything big starts small. That dream, that vision, that goal, it all starts with one step. And every step matters. The problem is we compare our little beginnings to somebody else's big breakthrough. We look at where they are now and forget that they too started small. Trusting God means believing that your small step is just as valuable as someone else's giant leap. Every time you get up when you don't feel like it, that's progress. Every time you pray when you're tired, that's progress. Every time you keep pushing when quitting would be easier, that's progress. Don't discount what looks small. It's laying the foundation for something bigger. Your journey won't always look Instagram-worthy. It won't always look impressive to other people. But you're not called to impress people. You're called to trust God. And He sees every effort, every seed planted, every small act of faith. If you keep taking small steps, eventually you'll look back and realize those little moves got you somewhere big. The compound effect of consistent trust is life-changing. Small steps stack up. They turn into habits. Habits turn into breakthroughs. And when you trust God with the small, you prove that you can be trusted with the big. It doesn't matter how much you trust people, at some point somebody is going to let you down. They'll say they've got your back, and when things get hard, they'll disappear. They'll tell you they'll be there forever, and forever only lasts until it's no longer convenient. That's human nature. People are fragile, people are flawed, and people will fail. But the one constant you can count on is God. He doesn't break promises. He doesn't change his mind about you. He doesn't walk away when things get difficult. His love is steady. His commitment is unshakable, and his word never comes back empty. That's why you can't put all your trust in people. You've got to put it in him. When you trust people more than you trust God, you set yourself up for heartbreak. But when you trust God above everything else, even when people let you down, you won't collapse because your foundation isn't built on them. It's built on him. People may leave you at your lowest, but God draws closer. People may use your weakness against you, but God covers you in it. People may forget about you, but God has your name written on the palm of his hand. His presence doesn't depend on your perfection. It depends on his promise. There's nothing wrong with loving people, building with people, and believing in people, but you have to remember they're human. They can only carry so much. Only God can carry the weight of your whole life. He can handle every fear, every burden, every secret, every dream. The reason you can forgive people who fail you is because your hope isn't in them. It's in him. When you understand that, you stop expecting people to be what only God can be. You free yourself from disappointment because you know the only one who never fails is him. And once you learn to place people in their proper place and God in his rightful place, you'll find a peace that can't be shaken. Pain is something we try to avoid, but the truth is pain has a purpose. It's not random. It's not wasted. Every tear, every heartbreak, every disappointment is carrying a lesson that shapes you into who you were meant to be. Without pain, you wouldn't grow. Without pain, you wouldn't learn resilience. Without pain, you wouldn't discover your true strength. It's hard to see purpose in the middle of pain when you're crying yourself to sleep, when your heart is breaking, when the weight feels unbearable. You wonder what good can come out of it. But God specializes in turning pain into progress. He takes the very thing that tried to destroy you and uses it to build you. Think back to the times you thought you'd never make it out. You thought it was the end, but here you are, still standing. That pain pushed you to grow. It taught you lessons you carry today. It made you stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Sometimes God allows pain because it pushes you out of comfort zones. Comfort feels good, but it doesn't grow you. Pain, though, it forces you to change. It forces you to move. It forces you to trust God in ways you never had to before. You can't always avoid pain, but you can decide what it produces in you. It can either make you bitter or it can make you better. It can either harden your heart or it can deepen your faith. The choice is yours. The pain you're in now may not make sense yet, but one day you'll look back and see how it shaped you for the season you're in. You'll realize it wasn't wasted, it was working. And when you understand that, you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what's this teaching me? Too many people give up right before the breakthrough comes. They pray, they believe, they wait. But when it takes longer than they expected, they walk away. But what you've got to understand is quitting in the middle of the process guarantees you'll never see the promise. Think about a seed planted in the ground. You water it, you wait, but for a while you don't see anything happening. Underground roots are growing, the foundation is being built. But if you dig it up too soon because you think nothing's happening, you kill the very thing that was about to sprout. That's what happens when you quit too early in life. God is working behind the scenes even when you can't see it. The process is slow, but it's steady. It's building character, it's shaping you, it's getting you ready for the everything you've been praying for. The middle is always the hardest part. The excitement of starting is gone, but the reward of finishing isn't here yet. That's where most people quit. But if you can keep trusting God in the middle, that's when you discover strength you didn't know you had. Sometimes the reason the process feels long is because God is making sure what He gives you won't slip out of your hands. He's securing the foundation so when the blessing comes, you won't crumble under the weight. It's tempting to quit when it feels like nothing is happening. But faith says, even if I can't see it, I know it's working. That's why trust is so important. It keeps you planted when your feelings want you to walk away. And when the promise finally comes, you'll be grateful you didn't quit in the middle, because you'll see everything you went through was worth it. One of the easiest ways to lose sight of God's plan for your life is by comparing it to somebody else's. You scroll through social media and see people celebrating, traveling, getting promotions, getting married, and suddenly you feel like you're behind. Comparison robs you of gratitude, and gratitude fuels trust. You've got to remind yourself that what God has for them is for them, and what He has for you is for you. Their timeline isn't your timeline. Their path isn't your path. Trusting God means believing that your lane is enough, your pace is enough, your story is enough. When you compare, you insult the process God has you on. You're basically saying, God, I don't trust what you're doing in me. But when you choose to celebrate others while staying focused on your own journey, you prove your faith. You prove you trust that He knows what He's doing with you. Some of the delays you experience are because God is customizing your journey. He's not giving you a copy and paste life. He's writing a story so unique that it couldn't possibly be compared to anyone else's. Comparison creates unnecessary pressure. It makes you chase things you were never meant to have. It makes you doubt the very blessings already in your life. But when you stop comparing, you start appreciating. And appreciation is what makes your trust grow deeper. If you spend your time comparing, you'll always feel behind. But if you spend your time trusting, you'll realize you're right where you need to be. You can't run your race while staring at someone else's lane. And when you stay focused on your own path, you'll discover that God's timing for you was perfect all along. Gratitude is one of the most powerful tools you have because it shifts your focus. Instead of obsessing over what's missing, you start noticing what's already there. And the more you thank God for what He's already done, the easier it is to trust Him for what's next. When you're grateful, your perspective changes. You stop seeing your life through the lens of lack and start seeing it through the lens of abundance. Even if you don't have everything you want, you realize you've got more than enough to be thankful for. Gratitude doesn't ignore problems, but it puts them in their proper place. You might have bills due, but you also have breath in your lungs. You might be waiting on a breakthrough, but you also have blessings you prayed for years ago. Gratitude reminds you that God has already been faithful. The enemy wants you to forget what God has done. He wants you focused only on the gap between where you are and where you want to be. But gratitude pulls your attention back to the fact that God has never left you empty-handed. Every time you stop to give thanks, your faith gets stronger, because if He did it before, He can do it again. Gratitude builds trust by reminding you of His track record, and His record has no losses. When you start your day with gratitude, it changes the tone of everything else. Your problems don't feel as heavy. Your patience gets stronger. Your joy increases. Gratitude shifts the atmosphere of your whole life. And the more grateful you become, the easier it is to trust that the same God who blessed you yesterday will keep blessing you today and tomorrow. The future is one of the biggest stress points in life. We worry about jobs, about money, about relationships, about health. We play out 1,000 scenarios in our heads, and none of them bring peace. But here's the truth. Worrying about tomorrow doesn't change tomorrow. It just steals peace from today. God already knows your future. He wrote the script before you were even born. He knows the twists, the turns, the surprises. Nothing catches Him off guard. That's why you can trust Him with what's ahead. Sometimes the future feels scary because it's unknown. You want guarantees, you want control. But trust means stepping into the unknown, knowing God is already there. It means believing He's gone ahead of you and prepared the way. When you trust God with your future, you stop needing all the answers right now. You realize it's okay not to know because you know the one who does. That kind of trust releases you from constant stress and gives you the freedom to live fully in the present. Some of the things you're worried about in the future will never even happen. But God doesn't want you wasting energy on what-ifs. He wants you to focus on even if. Even if it doesn't go the way I planned, I trust God has a better plan. Trusting Him with your future doesn't mean life will be easy. It just means you'll have peace knowing He's guiding every step. You'll walk with confidence because you're not leaning on your own understanding. You're leaning on His. And when you get there, you'll realize everything you stressed over worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. Too many people believe their past is a permanent stain that keeps them from what God has for them. They think because of mistakes, failures, or shameful moments, they're no longer worthy of His plan. But your past doesn't disqualify you. In fact, it often prepares you for the very purpose He has ahead. God does and throw people away because of their past. If He only used perfect people, He'd have no one left to use. Every great person you've read about in Scripture had a past. They had flaws. They made mistakes. And yet, God still called them, still used them, still turned their story around. The enemy wants to trap you in guilt. He wants you replaying your failures until you feel like you're unworthy. But God's forgiveness wipes the slate clean. He doesn't see you through the lens of your past. He sees you through the blood of His Son. Your past is a teacher, not a prison. Those mistakes gave you wisdom. Those failures gave you resilience. Those regrets gave you compassion. Nothing you went through is wasted. God will use it all. You've got to stop letting shame write your future. The very thing you thought would disqualify you is often the thing God uses to connect you with others and show His power. Your scars are proof that healing is possible. The truth is, the enemy can't stop your future. The only way he wins is if you believe the lie that your past has already ruined you. But when you trust God, you realize your past is just a setup for redemption. And once you embrace that truth, you stop running from your past and start using it as evidence of how far God has brought you. Faith is not about seeing first and then believing. It's about believing before you see. Anybody can believe when the evidence is in front of them. But real trust is believing when there's no sign, no proof, no guarantee, just a word from God. Some of you are waiting on everything to look perfect before you step out. But if you wait for evidence, you'll never move. God calls you to trust Him before the results show up. He wants you to move on faith, not feelings. That's why breakthroughs often look impossible right before they happen. God allows situations to stretch your trust to the point where you've got nothing left to rely on but Him. And when you do, that's when the breakthrough comes. It's uncomfortable to believe without proof. It's frustrating to keep walking when nothing seems to be changing. But that's where trust is built. That's where your faith muscles grow. The enemy wants you to believe that no evidence means no hope, but God says no evidence is the perfect time for trust. Because when the breakthrough shows up, you'll know it wasn't coincidence, it was Him. The more you trust before the evidence, the more God can do in your life. Because He moves where faith is, He responds to trust, He honors belief. And when the evidence finally shows up, you'll realize the trust you had in the dark is what unlocked the blessing in the light. Pressure is something we all feel. The weight of responsibilities, expectations, struggles, it can crush you if you're carrying it alone. But when you trust God, that same pressure can be transformed into power. Pressure has a way of revealing what's really inside of you. If all you've got is your own strength, it'll break you. But if you've got trust in God, the pressure will push you closer to Him. It will draw out faith you didn't know you had. Think about diamonds. They don't form without pressure. That intense weight, that squeezing force, that's what creates something valuable. In the same way, the pressure in your life is shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more powerful. You don't have to run from pressure. You just have to change how you see it. Instead of saying, this is too much for me, start saying, this is preparing me. Instead of letting it crush you, let it build you. When you trust God with your pressure, you realize He wouldn't allow it if He didn't plan to use it. The very thing you thought would destroy you is what He'll use to promote you. That's why you can endure what others can't, because you know it's not just pressure, it's power in the making. Some of your greatest growth will come from seasons where the pressure was highest, because it forced you to rely on God more than yourself. And in that reliance, you discovered strength you never thought possible. And when you look back, you'll realize the pressure didn't crush you. It elevated you. The challenge for most of us isn't trusting God, it's trusting Him in all things. We trust Him with Sundays, but not with Mondays. We trust Him with the big things, but not the small things. We give Him the emergencies, but we try to handle the everyday stuff on our own. But real trust means all things, not some things. You can't compartmentalize God. You can't say, Lord, I'll trust you with my career, but let me handle my relationships. Or, I'll trust you with my health, but I'll worry about my money myself. That's not trust. That's partial control. Trusting Him in all things means handing over the messy stuff, the confusing stuff, the scary stuff, the little stuff. It means saying, Lord, I can't do this without you, and I don't even want to try. That's when His power shows up the most, when you surrender it all. Sometimes we think we're doing God a favor by giving Him the big problems, but we forget that He cares about every detail. If it matters to you, it matters to Him. There's nothing too small or too big for Him to handle. When you trust Him in all things, you live lighter. You stop carrying weights that were never meant for your shoulders. You stop stressing about things you can't fix. You stop trying to figure everything out because you know He already has. It's not easy to let go of control. It's not easy to hand everything over. But when you do, you discover freedom. You discover peace. You discover that God's hands are a lot steadier than yours. And when you finally trust Him in all things, you realize He's been holding you all along through every season, every struggle, every step of the way.